In the opening sequence of the movie, we are introduced to these Russians in the sub called the Sevastopol, and basically they are heading towards Russia. So what they do is basically the very core of the sub, that is this system, right? Some kind of AI. And basically, in order to activate it, you need to have this key, which is made up of two pieces, all right? You basically intersect together to make a key. And using that key, you can then, take out the mainframe and replace the original code and things like that, right? Basically, you would have control over the entity, if you will. So what happens is that they are just underwater doing that thing. And what they're purposefully doing is they are purposefully going in close range with other navies, right? Because they've successfully been able to do that without being detected, so they feel safe and protected, right? And then what starts happening is things start to get a bit crazy when the ship that they're monitoring on their radar, whenever they make a turn, the ship happens to be making a turn, so they can't quite understand what's going on. And then suddenly on the radar pops up a submarine that happens to be coming towards them, and right? And then what happens is that this alleged submarine fires a missile or a torpedo, and they brace for impact, right? And when on the radar, it kind of shows you where the missile, where the torpedo is. When the torpedo allegedly was supposed to make impact with the sub, nothing happens. And then when they look at the radar, the sub disappears. And what they do in response when they see this sub is they fire their own torpedoes. Eventually, the sub gets destroyed because of their own torpedo. Okay, so they fire a couple of torpedoes, and one torpedo, right, circles back around and it impacts the side of the sub, and the sub sinks. They call it the entity, right? Basically, what it's capable of doing is anything that is digitalized, anything. It can manipulate, it can hack into, it can take control of. So basically, it's a very, very powerful, evolved AI, and it's ahead of everybody else. So what happens is basically this, right? Is that now the world wants it, right? So what they're going after this key, and basically because they've realized how powerful this thing is, and whoever controls it gains global domination. It turns out that the first half of the key is with Ilsa, right? And she apparently goes to Istanbul and she kills this guy and she takes the key from him, or the first part of the key. So basically, they work for a guy called Kittredge. And basically, what happens is he puts a bounty on her head of $50 million, okay? And these mercenary teams are now after her to kill her and take the first half of the key, okay? Now, what happens is they're in Washington, D.C., and there's a meeting going on. They're talking about this entity and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And they start talking about how, other countries are preparing, mobilizing for it as well. And, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And he sits there for a while listening into what they're saying. And basically, eventually, he gasses everybody out, apart from Kittredge, right? He gives him this kind of face mask thing, gasses everybody out. Then he takes off the mask, he sits down, and he talks to him. And then he finds out that Kittredge was the one that put the bounty on Ilsa's head. And Kittredge and everybody else thinks Ilsa is dead. And then we get to see the cutscene. We got to see the scene of what actually happened. So he goes in, and instead of her being dead, as previously thought, she was actually alive, right? So he manages to save her, and he basically tells her, you need to stay dead, okay? Because you are mercenaries after you, when you pretend that you're dead, so they're not coming after you anymore. They do have one half of the key, because he gets it from Ilsa. So then what happens is this, okay? So that's in the Arabian desert, this happens now, and this mission's already happened. Now, what in Washington, D.C., these government guys were talking about, instead of destroying the entity, why not use it, right? But Ethan is different, right? He was the only one that was like, we need to destroy this thing. This thing in the hands of anybody is too dangerous. We have got to destroy it. So that's basically his mission now, right? So what happens is they go to this airport, and they all sat around and talking, and Benji and Luther are in this kind of like room somewhere, glass room, sat down on their computers, pretty much kind of checking the cameras, making sure nothing's kind of out of place, kind of keeping an eye on trying to find the guy who, has the key on him. And so what happens is that Ethan's now walking around the airport, right? He's walking around. Now, the clever thing that they do is Kittredge basically sends out a group of guys to go after Ethan, right? The IMF, right? They're basically going against Kittredge and the government. Basically, they managed to put Ethan's face digitally on somebody else's face to make it look like that's Ethan. And so these bunch of guys are running around the airport trying to find where Ethan is. And what they're able to do is Luther and Benji are able to kind of distract them, giving Ethan time to be able to follow the guy and to get the key, right? For the second half of it, anyways. And whilst this is happening, there's a woman called Grace who is following Ethan. And she is working for Alona, right? Alona, but Grace doesn't know she's working for her. Okay, now she's following Ethan. Ethan's following this guy, and these other group of guys working for Kittredge. They are also after Ethan. Now, what happens is there's a moment where Benji is on the camera, and he's looking at the front desk, and there's this guy that comes in with a white suit on, with these kind of like sunglasses on. And he gets up and he sees there's this kind of warning sign that shows up on his computer, but then it disappears, right? And he doesn't think anything of it. So then they're focusing back on Ethan, and they're kind of telling him where he is now. Ethan has these glasses on where basically he's able to tell where the key is, right? Who's got the key. So he's following this guy, okay? Following this guy, he realizes he's gonna get on a plane to Venice. So Benji, books Ethan a ticket to Venice. As he's walking behind him, suddenly the key switches because Grace bumps into the guy, and then she ends up taking the key with her. So when Ethan turns around, he's also following Grace. Basically, Grace manages to escape. And what happens is this. So whilst all this madness is going on and Ethan's trying to figure out, who this woman is and about the key and everything, Benji gets that, that warning logo pops up on his computer again, and he realizes there's something in the bag. It turns out it's a bomb. So he goes running all the way down to where the, bags go down, before they get onto the plane. He goes down there and he manages to find the bag. He opens it up and he finds this container, opens up the container, and it turns out that it's the entity. Okay. And the entity, and in order to, diffuse it, you have to answer these questions, but you have to be honest, right? And so he's asking like personal questions and things, and it's the entity, right? And basically he answers the questions correctly, and then there's this bit where the last bit there's no question for the last one. For the last letter, there's no question. And then he looks down, there's like 2 seconds left, and he literally just moves this kind of one letter to make the word good look. And then the bomb opens and it turns out there's nothing in there. It was all just a distraction. Grace manages to go to Venice. Ethan then calls the police. She gets arrested as soon as she gets off. Ethan then turns up there in Venice and pretending to be her lawyer, and they then run away. Okay, so they leave the police station, but Grace then quickly gets into a police car. There's a chase sequence going on, right? So she's in the car and Ethan's behind her on a police motorbike. Anyway, eventually she crashes. He manages to get her. Here are some of the good things about Mission Impossible 7 that I really, really enjoyed. I really liked the fact that the antagonist was great. I loved how they went with the entity, because the entity, man, it's not a physical being. You have got to, and plus the entity is extremely powerful. Basically every other nation in the world is going after this thing to control it, and it knows everything about you. Any digital information that you have, no matter what it is, it can all be manipulated. It can all be changed, deleted, misleading. Right? And I love how they have an entity that's doing it, because it's not a person, man. It's a AI it's an evolved AI that's creating all this madness, and they have to go through hell and high water just to try and beat the damn thing. Okay, so I really enjoyed the thing, though, I gotta say, and I also loved Gabriel as well. That guy, man, he just has a demeanor about him. Like whenever you see him on screen, you wanna like shred him, you wanna tear him into 2 pieces, man. You absolutely despise him. I hate him. I just love how he's so unpredictable. You never know what he's gonna do. And plus, he doesn't look like somebody who could fight. But mate, he puts up a fight. He kills Ilsa, bro. He kills Ilsa. So Gabriel also kills Paris, who happens to be like his kind of works for him. I know it sounds weird. It gets very, very crazy very quickly. But I really love Gabriel's character though, because he wasn't necessarily over the top powerful, but he basically worked for the entity. And the best way to describe it is kind of like, I'm in Transformers Rise of the Beast, you have Unicron and then you have Scourge. It's basically like that, right? The entity is like Unicron and Gabriel is like Scourge. Right, he's the minion. He's the one that's gonna go and try to apprehend the key, get the key, and have it in his control. Right. I'm not quite sure what he was gonna do with it though. It's mind blowing, man. I really love the antagonist in this film. Ethan Hunt doesn't disappoint, man. He doesn't disappoint, and him and Grace, I really like their characters, especially Grace, because every opportunity she gets, she betrays Ethan, and it's like, oh my god, are you kidding me right now? And there are moments where you think, you know what? Okay, she ain't gonna betray him. No way. Look, they've been through all this madness. Ain't gonna happen. You know what she does? She tries to betray him. But Ethan's not dumb. Eventually, what he does is he basically handcuffs himself to her, and she tries to run, and they handcuff together. And I was like, guess what? They gotta go together everywhere. And then after that crazy chase sequence that happens in Rome, right? When Paris is after them in that massive, Hummer, and they're driving a Fiat 500, which is actually proper fast. And it was crazy, they were drifting in this Fiat 500, very funny. So they get to this point in this chase sequence where, you got police in front of you, cars in front of you, you got police all behind you. They've got nowhere to to go. Okay, and they kind of stop, and from behind, Ethan looks into the mirror from behind, and he sees Paris coming in that Hummer. So what does he do? He reverses the car into this little narrow gap. He keeps reversing back, right, flying back, and he ends up on a train track. Okay, now at this point you probably think, you know what, they gotta get out together. Nope. You know what Grace does? She undoes her cuff, right, and she handcuffs Ethan to the steering wheel, and then there's a train coming. What does he have to do? He has to pull off the entire steering wheel, and he was walking around with it. It's so hilarious. Honestly, it is. But you know, I really like Grace's character because, as I said, every chance that she had to betray Ethan, she would, right? That was until Ilsa was killed, and after that she was like, all right, like, this is crazy, what are we gonna do now? And then you have the train sequence that takes place, which, mate, I gotta say, was sick. Honestly, it was mad. It really was mad. Grace, basically, she knocks Alana out, and then she pretends to be her, right? And then she goes and talks to Kittredge, makes a deal to try and save her own skin. And yeah, so they're basically gonna make a deal. The deal's being completed, and then on this tablet, right, there's this money that's being extracted. I believe it said 100 million or something like that, and it got to 100%, and all she had to do was press accept, but she declines it, right? And then she takes the key, puts it in the pocket, and then she just goes. Okay, and as she's going, from behind comes the real Alana, right, stumbling down, and they're like, what's going on? She's got the key, so they go after her, and yeah, so Grace disappears. They don't know where she's gone, right? And Ethan manages to hook up with, the rest of the team. They get together, they go, and then Ilsa's there, so they hook up together. And Ethan's like, you guys gotta go. You gotta go, right? Like, anything that's got Gabriel in it, any mission that involves Gabriel, someone's gonna die. Like, this is mad. You gotta go, They basically were kind of going back and forth. They were like, no, that's maybe, how do you know that's not what the entity wants? Whatever. So anyway, so they agree. Okay, they agree, and they go to this party. Basically, Grace, she takes the first half of the key, and she's gonna go, and so they're in this kind of room now, and some madness goes down. They're kind of going back and forth, talking about how big a deal with her, and then you realize Gabriel's working for the entity, and he wants the key. Don't know what he was gonna do with it, and Alana's got the key now, so basically she is in her hands, right? And if she meets up with Gabriel on the train, then that deal was going to be made. That's why it was going to go down, right? So after that happened, Ethan leaves the building, so does Grace, and so does Ilsa. So they're basically all running away, right? And Ilsa's running far, Ethan's like, you get out of here. So she runs. Then he goes after, I think it's Grace that he goes after. And as he's running, and she's running around, and eventually on the bridge is waiting Gabriel. And what does she do? Grace goes up with a knife and she tries killing him. Okay, it doesn't work out. He was about to kill her. Ilsa turns up. They then have a fight. She pulls out a sword. He has a knife. And eventually she gets stabbed in the heart and she dies. And then after that, I gotta say, the death wasn't emotional, like when she dies, because you don't actually get to see that her dying and her, you get to see her dead, but you don't get to see her dying, so you don't kind of feel, I didn't feel anything there. But I gotta say though, after she's dead, that scene afterward when they're all in the building before, they go to Austria, or maybe that, you do feel it. You kind of have like a very heavy heart because you can feel the absence. And at this point, Grace, I think this is where Grace basically changes, and she feels bad, and she basically agrees that, okay, they're gonna go on this mission. The problem is Ethan has to get on the train, and what happens is, well, he's on his bike and he's following this train, trying to get on, but he can't, right? He needs it to slow down enough for him to get on. Well, what happens is Gabriel goes up to the front car, he knocks out the drivers, he basically puts the train into full speed, and he breaks the mechanism you use to slow down so the train is speeding up and you can't stop it, right? And Benji's there, trying to give him directions, telling him, oh, go here, go there, or there's a corner. It starts speeding up, and he's basically trying to get onto the train, right? And he's going through this crazy sequence of kind of going through this crazy terrain. It's in Austria, it's in the Alps, it's crazy. And he gets to the edge of this mountain, right, or this massive mountain, and Benji's like, yeah, you gotta go forward. And he's like, forward? No, it's down. I've got no room for me to jump down, and I'm not gonna get to the train. Well, you've got to go down. So after a little bit of contemplating, Ethan's like, okay, we got to do this. So he goes all the way up. He sees this kind of ridge, goes all the way up, and then you see the iconic stunt that Tom Cruise does. And when you see it, you're thinking, oh my days, this guy actually did this. You know what? This is what I love about these movies, though, is whenever you see a sequence, an actual stunt being done, that really happened. You know that there weren't any wires, or it wasn't green screened or any of that. It actually happened. It wasn't a stuntman that did it. Tom Cruise himself went on that ramp and did it. And yeah, it was a crazy scene. Basically, so when they find out and they realize that Grace is not Alana, Alana's guard, he basically goes after her with another guy, and it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. He goes through the window, slams into the guy, knocking the guy off the train through the window, right? The key ends up on the floor. Zola gets it. And then what happens is I think Zola's behind Ethan, and Ethan basically retracts the parachute. And as he's done that, he kind of slams against the wall with Zola behind him. And Zola has the key in his hand. And when he does that, he falls back. The key falls through the hole and falls into another cabin. And in that cabin was none other then Gabriel. Things are going to get interesting. Then what do we do? Then you have this sequence where basically Ethan goes after Gabriel, and he basically tells Grace to stop the train, right? And Ethan gets to the top of the train. He follows, Gabriel, and both having this fight. Gabriel's pulling out these knives, swinging at him, or whatever. Then it comes the tunnel. They get down, and he's kind of crawling towards him to hit him with the knife, whatever. And anyway, so the fight basically ends with Ethan about to win, right? He gets a knife, and he's kind of forcing it down, and he's almost gonna kill him. And then you think, okay, no, you're gonna stop. Then you think he's gonna back off, and as he's about to back off, he kind of starts pushing it down again. And you're thinking, what's this guy doing? He's actually gonna kill him. Now, the reason why you didn't want him to kill Gabriel is because Gabriel's the only one that knows what the key unlocks. Now, I know you're gonna be wondering, where was Luther at this point? Basically, before they go off for the train sequence, Luther's computer gets hacked, right? You know when after the party, when everyone was running around, basically the computer gets hacked. As I said, anything digital gets hacked, and basically they had to smash their computers. And basically, the entity started talking through the comms. It hacked into the comms, pretending to be Benji, giving Ethan the wrong directions, right? So that he couldn't get to Gabriel in time to protect Grace and Ilsa, right? And basically it traps him in between, I believe it was it Zola and Paris. And basically there's a crazy sequence where they're all kind of fighting in this very tight, narrow alley. Ethan basically manages to win. Then he goes running full speed, trying to get to the bridge. He gets to the bridge, he finds Elsa dead, and then they have that scene afterwards. So basically, before they go into the mission, two things happen. Luther basically has the hard drive of his laptop, and he says, maybe I could use this to figure out the location of this thing or what it opens. Another thing he tells Ethan is, don't kill Gabriel. And then there's a scene where he's pushing it out and thinking, oh my days, he's actually going to kill him. And then one of the guys that works for Kittredge turns up with a gun, pointing at him, drop the knife, so he gets to it, he goes, it's all right, grab him. And basically, they're going over this bridge where this truck is coming, and all Gabriel does is he jumps onto this truck, and that's it. Now, off they go. Now, what Ethan then does, he tells those guys who are after him, listen, get everybody, we got a plan. So basically, they then go and get everybody to the back of the train, and Ethan makes his way to the front car. When he gets there, he sees that the mechanism to brake has been broken, right? Because Gabriel broke it. So what do? They go 2 cars back, and you know how train cars are kind of connected via this kind of mechanism. They basically destroy that mechanism, so the first 2 cars go down, and so that the rest of the train can stop. Well, they do that, but that's not how it happens, because the first car goes down, the second one goes down, and then the second cart starts pulling the third cart down. The third cart then goes down. Then they kind of climb their way up. So then they get stuck in the third cart, and you think, oh my days, that's it, they're done, right? This piano falls through, and you think, oh my days, they're done. What are they gonna do? And then Paris is, she's on top of this counter, so she helps both of them get up. They get off, and then they get onto the next cart, which is literally just stops just on the edge, right? And that's when Grace realizes that Paris was stabbed. She does get stabbed. Okay, she basically, Gabriel goes to make a deal with this guy who knows everything about the entity and the location of where it is and what it does. Basically, he kills him, and then he tries to kill Paris, and he manages to stab her. Then he runs away, and they don't realize this. Grace realizes that she's been stabbed. Then Ethan starts talking to Paris. Ethan then leaves. He jumps out and gets a parachute. There's a kind of field where Benji's waiting for him. Then he gets in the car, and he has the key. Right? Basically, the target for all of them now is the Sevastopol, because, as I said before, that is where the heart of the entity is. It was a good movie, fantastic, action-packed. It was thrilling, right? All the characters were great, man. I can't complain. The movie was actually good. It was good. It had some very funny moments in it, like with the Fiat 500, that chase sequence when they were in that car. It was just hilarious, some of the things they were doing. And, the fact that the bit that kind of blew me away was when, Grace cannot drive. She's such a terrible driver. That bit was hilarious. They managed to create comedy in intense situations without removing the tension, and I think that was something that was great. another comedy. I don't mean too funny, but it was funny. You know, you do have like laughs. You will start to laugh when you see it, right? And man, I love the movie. It's fantastic, man. I recommend you guys go and watch it, right? And there's nothing major in the film. The dialogue was good. I enjoyed the dialogue. Ilsa's character, just want to make clear, doesn't have too much to do. I'm gonna give you a 9 out of 10. The only thing about the movie I wasn't so sure about was the train sequence. Because when I saw the trailer, I'm thinking, yo, this is gonna be some kind of crazy sequence that's gonna happen. You know, maybe the train is gonna crash and it's gonna blow up or something. I don't know. But I don't know, man. It's just weird because Paris saving, Grace and Ethan after being stabbed, right, in the stomach, right? For God knows, up to that point, it must have been at least 5-10 minutes since she got stabbed, right? That was probably the only thing I kind of questioned. Apart from that, really, I can't complain. I think it was a good movie, and no complaints there. I can't wait to see the second part. I recommend you go watch it. It's got the action, it's got the adventure, and it's got some thrilling scenes in it. If you love videos like this, then be sure to subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, join the family, because we are on the road 100 subscribers before the end of the year. 100 subscribers, guys. Let's make this happen. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of this film. Anyways, guys, until next time, out. Peace.